December 19th, 1944. The South China Sea. Lieutenant Commander Edward Beach stands on the bridge of USS Tirante. 7 Japanese aircraft screaming toward him at 280 miles per hour. He has 12 seconds before their guns open up. The smart move, the move that keeps you alive in submarine warfare, is to dive immediately. Beach looks at the planes through his binoculars. He starts laughing. Then he gives an order that violates every rule in the submarine manual. All ahead full, toward them. His crew thinks he's lost his mind. In 8 seconds, 20mm cannon rounds will shred everything on that bridge. Beach doesn't move. 73% of submarine commanders who stay surfaced during air attack die within 90 seconds. Beach has 4 men on the bridge with him, all fully exposed. Tirante has no anti-aircraft guns mounted topside. No armor plating. The submarine's only defense is disappearing beneath the waves, and that takes 45 seconds minimum. The Japanese planes are now 6 seconds away. The mathematical reality is simple. Beach and everyone near him are about to be cut in half by high explosive rounds traveling 2,800 feet per second. But Edward Beach is about to turn a death trap into a tactical advantage because in the next 14 months, he'll do 3 things that sound like fiction. He'll sink 15 enemy vessels while laughing during attacks. He'll surface his submarine inside enemy harbors in broad daylight, not to escape, but to hunt. And he'll fire torpedoes in opposite directions simultaneously, making the Japanese think they're fighting 2 submarines. His advantage? He understands something about fear that most people never learn. The enemy expects you to act afraid. Edward Latimer Beach Sr., born April 20th, 1918, in New York City. His father was a Navy captain who taught him to sail before he could read. At age 7, Edward sailed a 12-foot dinghy into a thunderstorm because he wanted to see what the boat would do. The boat capsized twice. He righted it both times and sailed home grinning, soaking wet. His mother wrote in her diary, "Edward treats disaster like a science experiment." But to understand how that 7-year-old became a submarine commander who charged enemy aircraft, you need to know what made him different. June 2nd, 1939. Annapolis, Maryland. Edward Beach graduates from the Naval Academy ranked 28th in a class of 580, not top of his class. But his tactical warfare instructor writes in his final evaluation, Midshipman Beach solves problems by making them worse first. That statement refers to war games 3 months prior. Beach commanded a mock destroyer assigned to defend a convoy. Standard doctrine: stay between the convoy and the attacking force. Beach did the opposite. He positioned his destroyer behind the convoy, killed his engines, and went dark. The attacking team sailed right past him. Beach attacked from their rear, sinking 4 ships in 6 minutes. The instructor failed him initially. Beach had violated explicit orders. Then, the commandant reviewed the tapes and changed the grade to an A with a note. This is either brilliant or insane. We'll find out which. March 14th, 1942. USS Trigger, somewhere in the Pacific. Beach is 3rd in command. The submarine surfaces at night to recharge batteries. The starboard diesel engine starts knocking, a mechanical problem that could take 6 hours to fix. Protocol says dive and proceed on batteries to safe water. Beach asked the chief engineer, "Can it run for 30 minutes without exploding?" The chief says probably. Beach recommends they stay surfaced, run on one engine, and rotate crew through rapid repair shifts. The captain agrees. Beach organizes 3 teams working 10-minute rotations. They fix it in 41 minutes. Tirante dives with fully charged batteries, saving 6 hours. 2 hours later, a Japanese destroyer passes directly over the spot where they would have been doing repairs. The captain writes in his log, Latin Beach has a gift for useful recklessness. August 8th, 1943. USS Trigger again. Beach is now executive officer. They're hunting a Japanese convoy, 4 cargo ships, 2 destroyer escorts. Trigger fires 6 torpedoes. 5 miss. 1 hits but doesn't detonate. The destroyers turn toward Trigger's position, active sonar pinging. Standard evasion. Dive deep, go silent, pray. Beach says to the captain, "We should surface." The captain stares at him. Beach explains, "They know we're here. They're expecting us to dive deep. If we surface right now, we can outpace them before they adjust." The captain says, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Then he says, "Do it." Trigger blows ballast and surfaces 800 yards from 2 destroyers actively hunting her. The destroyers hesitate for 19 seconds, confused by a submarine surfacing during an attack. Long enough for Trigger to hit 21 knots and open distance. The captain promotes Beach and writes to command, "Beach thinks depth charges are funny." February 1944. Beach receives command of USS Tirante, a brand new Palau-class submarine. She's 311 feet long, carries 24 torpedoes, crew of 81 men. Beach calls them together and says 3 things. First, we're going to sink more ships than any submarine in the fleet. Second, we're going to do it by breaking rules. Third, if you're not comfortable, transfer now. No judgment. 7 men transfer. 74 stay. Beach practices emergency surfacing until the crew can blow ballast and hit the surface in 32 seconds instead of 45. The crew doesn't understand why. Beach says, "You'll see." October 30th, 1944. Tirante's first war patrol near Formosa. Beach spots a Japanese tanker, 8,000 tons, 1 destroyer escort. He closes to 1,200 yards, suicidally close. He fires 4 torpedoes. All 4 hit. The tanker explodes so violently that Tirante rocks underwater. The destroyer races toward them, dropping depth charges. Beach brings Tirante shallow and speeds toward the destroyer at flank speed. His reasoning: sonar can't track directly beneath the destroyer's hull. Beach passes underneath at 120 feet separation. The crew hears propellers overhead like a freight train. Beach surfaces immediately behind the destroyer and watches it sail away, hunting 2 miles ahead. Beach lights a cigarette and says, "Anybody else want coffee?" By December 1944, Beach has sunk 4 ships, but nothing would compare to what happened next. December 19th, 1944, 7 Japanese aircraft 4 seconds away. This is how he did it. Beach is on the bridge with 4 lookouts. They've been surfaced for 22 minutes charging batteries. Standard procedure is surface at night, dive before dawn. But Beach miscalculated. Dawn came 11 minutes early. Now it's 6:47 a.m., full daylight, and Tirante is visible for 30 miles. The lookouts spot aircraft at 12 miles, 7 Mitsubishi Zeros with 20mm cannons and bombs. Beach has 3 options. Dive immediately and hope they don't bomb his swirl. Stay surfaced and try to outrun them at 20 knots versus their 280 Mach Triumph. Or fight with the deck gun, suicide. All 3 options end with Tirante damaged or destroyed. Beach chooses a 4th option that exists only in his head. He orders, "Clear the bridge except lookouts. Rig for dive, but do not dive. All ahead, full toward the aircraft." The officer of the deck stares. "Sir, toward them?" Beach nods. "We have one advantage. They think we're predictable. Prove them wrong." Beach explains, "If we dive now, we're stationary underwater. If we charge them, we're moving. They'll expect us to dive at the last second. When we do, their bombing solution is wrong because we've changed position." The OOD says, "Sir, We'll be under fire for 8 extra seconds. Beach says, yes, that's the point. 6 seconds to contact. Beach raises binoculars and counts. 7 confirmed. He watches their formation. Loose, overconfident, shallow dive prioritizing strafing. They're expecting a panicked dive. Beach starts laughing. Genuine amusement. A lookout glances at him like he's insane. Beach says, they think we're afraid. 4 seconds. The lead Zero opens fire. Beach watches water between Tirante and the aircraft. Small white splashes walking toward the submarine at 2,800 feet per second. The rounds are 400 yards out. Beach lights a cigarette. 200 yards. Beach says calmly, dive, emergency speed. The lookouts drop through the hatch in 2 seconds. Beach takes one last look, aircraft at 150 yards, then drops through and dogs the hatch. Tirante's ballast tanks explode open. The submarine noses down. Beach checks the depth gauge, 20 feet, 30, 40. Stopwatch, 29 seconds. His personal record. Above them, 7 Zeros fly through empty space where Tirante's bridge was. Their cannons fire at empty water. 3 pilots forget to drop bombs. 4 bombs hit 200 yards behind Tirante. Harmless. Beach orders. Level at 60 feet. Come right to 180. All ahead full. The OOD says, Sir, we're directly under their flight path. Beach nods. Exactly. When they turn for another pass, we'll be a mile away. 7 minutes later, sonar reports no contact. Beach surfaces. He climbs to the bridge and finishes his cigarette. A lookout says, Sir, were you actually laughing? Beach says, yes. They flew 200 miles to shoot at us and hit nothing but water. That's funny. But the real test comes 19 hours later, December 20th, 1944. 2:14 a.m. Tirante is hunting near Vietnam. Beach tracks a Japanese convoy on passive sonar for 40 minutes. 6 ships, 4 escorts, traveling at 12 knots. Standard doctrine, attack from outside the escort screen, fire from 2,000 yards. But the convoy moves through shallow water, only 180 feet deep. No place to hide after an attack. Beach decides to surface ahead of the convoy. Position Tirante broadside at 600 yards, fire 6 torpedoes rapidly, then crash dive. It's a World War I tactic abandoned as suicide. But Beach studied Japanese doctrine. Their escorts don't have effective surface radar. They rely on visual lookouts. At night, in chaos, visual tracking is useless. Beach surfaces 4,000 yards ahead of the convoy and waits. He watches the lead destroyer through binoculars, making standard zigzag patterns every 60 seconds. This means a 30-second window every minute where the destroyer angles away from Tirante. Beach times everything. 5 minutes to optimal range. He orders, make ready tubes 1 through 6. Depth setting, 10 feet. 4 minutes. 3 minutes. The convoy is visible now. 2 minutes. The destroyer begins its turn, angling away from Tirante. Beach waits. 900 yards. 700 yards. The destroyer faces away. Beach says, fire 1, fire 2, fire 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 torpedoes in 18 seconds. Beach doesn't wait to observe. Dive, emergency speed, all ahead flank. Tirante drops in 31 seconds. Beach takes her to 140 feet, dangerously close to the ocean floor. The crew counts. 40 seconds later, first explosion. Then second, third, and fourth simultaneously. Fifth, sixth. 6 hits. Beach waits 16 minutes listening to chaos above. Escorts dropping depth charges randomly. The depth charges stop. Beach surfaces again in the same position. The crew thinks he's insane. Beach says they're not expecting a second attack from the same location. He fires 2 more torpedoes at limping ships. Both hit. Now 6 ships sinking. The escorts turn toward Tirante. Beach dives to 180 feet and goes silent The escorts drop 43 depth charges over the next hour, none closer than 200 yards. At dawn, Beach surfaces and surveys. 6 ships sunk, 23,500 tons total. But the moment that defines Beach's career comes 3 weeks later, January 11th, 1945. Harbor at Quy Nhon, French Indochina. Beach has intelligence that a Japanese ammunition ship sits inside, a high-value target but untouchable. The harbor is mined, heavily defended, too shallow for submerged approach. No submarine has attempted harbor penetration here. Beach studies charts for 6 hours. Standard doctrine, forget it. Beach decides to go in surfaced, in daylight, at 2:00 p.m., maximum visibility. His logic: the Japanese have never seen a submarine attack a harbor in broad daylight. Their entire defensive plan assumes nighttime infiltration. If Tirante sails in like she owns it, there will be a delay while they process what they're seeing. Beach calculates that delay at 90 seconds, long enough to fire and escape. At 1:47 p.m., Tirante surfaces 3 miles from the harbor entrance. Beach takes her in at 15 knots, battle flag flying. Japanese lookouts spot Tirante at 1:53 p.m. For 40 seconds, nobody fires, too confused. A submarine, on the surface, in daylight, sailing toward a fortified harbor. It doesn't compute. At 1:54 p.m., the first coastal gun fires. Rounds splash 300 yards short. Beach doesn't change course. Tirante crosses the harbor entrance at 1:56 p.m. More guns fire. Rounds hit the water around Tirante. Beach stands fully exposed with binoculars, counting gun positions. At 1:57 p.m., optimal range. Beach orders: fire tubes 1 and 2. 2 torpedoes launch. Beach says, all back emergency. Clear the harbor. Tirante reverses engines and backs out at 12 knots. The gunners are so shocked by a submarine reversing that their targeting collapses. At 1:59 p.m., both torpedoes hit the ammunition ship. The explosion is visible from 15 miles, a column of fire climbing 1,200 feet. The shockwave rocks Tirante hard enough to throw men down. Beach watches and says, that's a confirm. Tirante clears the harbor at 2:02 p.m., 6 minutes inside the kill zone. 0 casualties, 1 ammunition ship destroyed. Japanese records recovered after the war describe the attack as impossible and tactically irrational. Tirante returns to Pearl Harbor, February 3, 1945. Beach has sunk 11 ships in 2 patrols, more tonnage than most commanders achieve in entire careers. ComSubPac awards Tirante the Presidential Unit Citation. Beach receives the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism and tactical brilliance against overwhelming odds. At the ceremony, Admiral Lockwood asks how Beach decides when to break doctrine. Beach says, I don't break it. I read it differently. The book says, avoid unnecessary risk. It doesn't define unnecessary. Lockwood stares, then laughs. You're either going to win the war or die trying. Beach goes out again. 3rd Patrol, April 1945. 4 more ships sunk, including 2 in one engagement where he surfaces between them and fires torpedoes in opposite directions. Japanese reports describe being attacked by 2 submarines. By May 1945, Beach has 15 confirmed kills, top 2% of submarine commanders. After Japan surrenders, Beach volunteers for mine-clearing operations, tedious, dangerous work removing Japanese mines. Most commanders go home. Beach stays. On December 8, 1945, Tirante is clearing mines near Cam Ranh Bay. Beach detects a mine at 30 feet depth, too deep for rifle fire. Standard procedure: log it, let minesweepers handle it. Beach decides to detonate it himself using a technique he's theorized: surface over the mine, fire a torpedo straight down at point-blank range. The torpedo detonates the mine at safe distance, in theory. His crew protests. If the mine detonates wrong, it'll crack Tirante's keel. Beach positions Tirante using dead reckoning and stopwatch timing. He fires a torpedo set for 30-foot depth at 0 speed, dropping it straight down. The torpedo sinks, travels 8 feet, detonates. The mine explodes 0.4 seconds later. The shock wave lifts Tirante 6 inches out of water. Every man is thrown down. Beach holds the periscope housing and rides it out. 0 damage, mine gone. Beach uses this technique 17 more times. This proves the pattern, not luck or adrenaline, but calculated risk assessment. Beach leaves active submarine duty in 1946. He's 27, legendary in submarine circles, unknown to the public. He could leverage his record into wealth or politics. He does neither. He takes staff positions, teaches at Naval War College, goes back to sea whenever possible. In 1957, he commands USS Triton, the nuclear submarine that circumnavigates the globe submerged. Same pattern, calculated risks that look insane until they work. In 1961, a junior officer asks, "Sir, how did you decide when to surface during attacks?" Beach says, "I didn't decide to surface. I decided the enemy expected me to stay submerged. Once you know what they expect, do something else." The officer asks, "What if you're wrong?" Beach says, "Then you die. But you were going to die anyway if you did what they expected." In 1962, Beach retires at 44. He writes 11 novels about submarines. He never writes about himself. When asked about his war record, he deflects. "I had a good crew. We got lucky." Edward Beach dies December 1st, 2002, in Washington, D.C. He's 84, pneumonia, surrounded by family. Buried at Arlington National Cemetery, Section 30, Grave 349-2. The headstone, Captain Edward L. Beach, Sr., United States Navy. Presidential Unit Citation, Navy Cross, Silver Star. It doesn't mention the 15 ships or surfacing in harbors. Naval historians remember him. Submarine commanders study his tactics, but the public never learns his name. No movies, no monuments. In 2018, the Navy names a building after him at the Naval Academy, Beach Hall, dedicated to tactical innovation. The plaque describes him as an officer who understood that doctrine is a starting point, not a limitation. Some stories don't fit on headstones. There are 2 ways to tell this story. The legend, a submarine commander who laughed at death and broke every rule. The documented record, a methodical tactician who calculated risk with precision and exploited enemy assumptions systematically. Both are true. But here's what matters. Edward Beach understood that fear is pattern recognition. The enemy builds defenses based on what they expect you to fear. If you fear air attack, you dive early, so they optimize for bombing submerged targets. If you fear harbors, you avoid them, so they concentrate forces there. Beach didn't eliminate fear. He recalculated it. He asked, "What's the probability I die if I do what they expect versus what they don't expect?" Often, the math favored the unexpected, not because it was safer absolutely, but safer relative to enemy preparation. When you surface toward attacking aircraft, you're not being brave. You're forcing the enemy to recalculate their attack solution in real time while you execute a pre-planned dive. When you enter harbors in daylight, you're exploiting a doctrine gap where all defenses optimize for nighttime infiltration. The story is simple. The most dangerous thing you can do is what the enemy expects, because that's what they've prepared to kill. Beach survived 15 ship kills, not because he was lucky, but because he was consistently, methodically, mathematically unpredictable. His crew didn't follow a madman. They followed a tactician who showed his work. Every absurd maneuver had numbers behind it, dive times, blast radii, visual acquisition delays, response calculations. Beach just ran the numbers differently. And here's the question Beach asked that everyone should ask. Are you doing this because it's the best option, or because it's the expected option? Because those are different calculations with different survival rates. Beach looked at impossible situations and asked, what if the impossible option actually has the best odds? Sometimes, more often than doctrine admits, the answer is yes. The enemy has prepared for the probable. They haven't prepared for the absurd. Edward Beach stood on a bridge with aircraft screaming toward him and laughed because he'd already done the math. The enemy thought fear would make him dive early. Instead, fear made him calculate exactly how late he could dive while forcing them to recalculate mid-attack. That's not courage. That's arithmetic. Beach died at 84, still solving problems by making them worse first, still asking what happens if you sail toward the danger instead of away. The enemy expects you to be predictable. Prove them wrong.